Zach Cox here with Dakota Randall inside Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens, Florida. After the Patriots' Week 1 loss to the Miami Dolphins, the Dolphins won this game 20-7. We will get into everything that led to that result in just a second, but the biggest news coming out of this game, Mac Jones, Patriots quarterback, underwent X-rays shortly after the final whistle on his injured back. According to reports, those X-rays have come back negative, but he will be evaluated further when the team gets back to Foxborough. Now, as we are recording this, we don't know the severity. We don't know how long Mac Jones could potentially be out, even if he is out at all. But obviously, when your starting quarterback is undergoing X-rays after a game, that is not a positive sign for the Patriots.
Yeah, it's obviously really bad news for the Patriots. Again, you mentioned that the X-rays came back negative. We don't know what kind of a back injury it is either. Obviously, there are multiple kinds. We did see Mac Jones in the locker room after the game. Hard to really get any read on the situation. I mean, I think just generally he looked down as a whole. It was hard to tell, was that about the result of the game? Was that the injury? Was it a combination of the two? Probably that. But again, obviously his situation will be something to monitor in the days ahead, because if he has to miss any time, that's a big problem for the Patriots, who have a tough opponent next week. Brian Hoyer is your backup quarterback. You don't love that, so it's definitely something to watch.
Yeah, Brian Hoyer is that primary backup. Bailey Zappi, the rookie, was a healthy scratch for this game. He's currently third string. We don't actually know exactly how or when Mac Jones suffered this injury as well, right, but he did take a couple of pretty big hits to the back in that fourth quarter, so certainly most likely on one of those. Again, obviously going to be a situation we'll be monitoring throughout this week. As for the game itself, it looked a lot like a 2021 Patriots game.
Yeah, for all the wrong reasons.
Yes,
yeah.
This was not a game where the Patriots were resoundingly outplayed. The Dolphins didn't look like clearly the better team for this entire game. The Patriots were able to move the ball pretty well at times, especially on their opening drive. They went their entire opening drive without facing a single third down. It was kind of a nice start and an encouraging moment after all the struggles that they had during the preseason. Then that drive ends with an interception, and then you've got 2 additional turnovers later, some poorly timed penalties, just the Patriots failing to capitalize on a lot of these opportunities, which really was the story for last year's team, and it's troubling that a lot of these same mistakes are still happening.
Yeah, it is. Like you said, it looked a lot like the 2021 Patriots in that, the offense is doing some good things. They're moving the ball, picking up first downs, and all of a sudden it's penalties, it's sacks, it's missed assignments by the offensive line, it's turnovers that set them back. And I think just as concerning is sort of this trend, again, that dates back to last season, where this sort of snowball gets going, and it gets going downhill, and the Patriots can't seem to do anything about it. It was almost like as soon as that Mac Jones interception happened, you kind of got an idea for how the rest of the game would go. And so it's something that they got to figure out. Again, late in the game, I found myself thinking, two mistakes. If you get rid of these 2 bad mistakes for the Patriots, they're leading this game. Yeah. And I feel like I said that almost every game down the stretch last year. And so I don't know what that says about them. Obviously, they got it corrected. It makes you, if you're being optimistic, you'd say that they're not that far away from being competitive and winning some of these games. But on the downside is, it's a trend that we saw last year and is continuing into this year, and it's costing them games. And
Bill Belichick referenced those 2 plays after the game. The 2 plays, strip sack of Mac Jones near the Patriots' own goal line. Defensive back blitzes in, comes in unchecked, unblocked. Was a problem for the Patriots' offensive line all summer, has yet to be remedied. And then the other big play was a 4th and 7 in the final minute of the first half. Ends up being a 40-plus yard touchdown to Jalen Waddle. That put the Patriots down 17-0 at half. That play doesn't happen. They're down 10-0, and that's easily a manageable deficit. 17-0, a lot harder to come back from.
Yeah, one thing, Kyle Duggar did take responsibility for that during the postgame. I'm not sure if it's all on him, but he did say that he did a bad job on that play.
It was an otherwise very good game, too, from Kyle Duggar, but that was certainly a low point for the second-year safety that a lot of people have pretty high hopes for this year. Third-year safety, rather. One development from the second half, or I guess from the entire game as a whole, we barely saw Kendrick Bourne on the field at all in this game. He didn't play his first offensive snap until the Patriots' final drive, which came late in the fourth quarter. He only played 2 offensive snaps overall, but one of those was a 41-yard catch down the left sideline, the Patriots' longest gain of the game. That was the kind of player he was last year for the Patriots. He was their big play threat. He was their most explosive wide receiver. But he had a really strange summer, a tumultuous summer, and he really had seemed to have fallen behind on that wide receiver depth chart, and that was the case today. Jacoby Myers, Devontae Parker, Nelson Aguilar, even little Jordan Humphrey, who was elevated from the practice squad, all played over Bourne in this game. Bourne said afterwards that he's not doing what he needs to do in practice to earn the coach's trust. He said it's a bit of a focus issue for him. He did take responsibility for the fact that he isn't in this wide receiver mix anymore. But for a guy who was such an important part of this Patriots offense last year, it's worrying that he is where he is right now.
Yeah, he said all the right things after the game today, and it was the first time we've heard from him, I think, since the fight against the Carolina Panthers in
close to
practices.
A month.
Yeah, but I do think it's worth noting too that after he made that big play down the sideline, he was taken out of the game, and it was Nelson Aguilar who came back in as the third receiver. He ended up catching that pass and fumbling it in the play that essentially ended the game. It looked like Bourne was really frustrated on the sideline after that, kind of swatted something off the sideline, and I think it was Jonnu Smith came over. It looked like he had to calm him down, just looked really frustrated. And so I just wonder if behind the scenes, if he's far more upset than he's letting on. I don't imagine why he wouldn't be. I mean, he's a competitor. He wants to be out there. He wants to be playing. And so it'll be interesting. Maybe that play persuades the Patriots coaching staff to give him more opportunities next week. But it just continues to be baffling because we don't have too much insight into why this is happening. But he was one of the most electric players last season. It brings an element to this offense that they don't really have from the other players. And so it'll be interesting to see if his situation changes next week.
Yeah, certainly a player a lot of people thought might have even been a potential starter going into training camp, now very far down on that wide receiver depth chart. We'll see if that changes in the coming weeks. And speaking of the coming weeks, the Patriots next Sunday will visit the Pittsburgh Steelers, who got off to a positive start in their season opener, won in overtime over the defending AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals, but they could be significantly shorthanded against the Patriots next week. Two of their better players, more important players, TJ Watt and Najee Harris, both left this game today against the Bengals with injuries. At least with Watt, it sounds like that might potentially be a very long-term injury. I know there's been reports that he potentially tore his pec.
Yep.
We don't have the exact diagnosis on that yet, and Harris's as well could be something that sidelines him for multiple weeks. So for a Steelers team that already has a kind of questionable quarterback situation with Mitchell Trubisky in there, those are two players that are going to be hard for them to replace.
Yeah, and again, that's already, or was going to, it still is going to be a tough game for the Patriots to win no matter what. Again, the Steelers went in there today and beat the Cincinnati Bengals, who obviously are a very good team. But you can't underplay how big of a difference it would make if Watt and Harris aren't able to go. Harris is somebody who I don't think he's really lit the world on fire since he came into the league. He certainly gets a lot of volume and he's really talented, but he's their starting running back. He has a huge role in the offense. That changes things if he's not in there. And then TJ Watt, one of the best players in all of football. And like you said, it sounds like it's a torn pec, which certainly would sideline him for the game against the Patriots. We'll have to see what it looks like for him for the rest of the season. But yeah, those would be two huge losses for the Patriots. And I mean, let's be honest, at this point, they're a middle of the pack AFC team and they need all the breaks they can get going into these games. You don't want to wish bad health on any player, but for the Patriots, you'll take it if you can go into that game without those guys playing.
Yep, some difficult games coming up for the Patriots. Steelers, Ravens, then Packers to close out this first quarter of the season. So yes, the Patriots are definitely going to need to take wins wherever they can get them. Final from Miami, 20-7, Miami Dolphins over the New England Patriots. I'm Zach Cox, here with Dakota Randall. Patriots will be back at it again next Sunday in Pittsburgh.